I am Vitaly Portnikov. As an advisor to Israeli Prime Minister Tzvi Hanegbi, I would like to convey his perspective that the ongoing war in the Gaza sector is unlikely to come to an end by the year 2024. This statement is made in relation to the ongoing operation that is taking place in the southern sector. In the United States, it is now claimed that the actions of the Israeli army have not yet crossed that red line set by the President of the United States, Joe Biden, primarily aimed at preventing large civilian casualties. And as paradoxical as it may sound, if the goal is indeed to avoid such large casualties, and Israel will take action through targeted strikes, then this will lead to the indefinite prolongation of the war, thus resulting in an ongoing conflict and a persistent threat to the safety and security of the parties involved, without a clear resolution in sight. Ultimately, terrorists will make an effort to employ the population as a bargaining chip in order to sustain their own infrastructure and maintain their role in the gas sector. Therefore, we can state with confidence that the conflict in the Middle East is expected to endure for an extended period of time. This indicates that the metastases in the region will be progressively increasing each day, resulting in a steady growth over time. The desire to preserve the lives of civilians will also lead to a noteworthy deterioration in Israel's relations with countries of the so-called Global South, and thus the deterioration of relations between the United States and these countries as a result of what will happen in the region will occur. And the current situation in Russia's ongoing war against Ukraine seems to be almost exactly the same as before. It is now becoming apparent that the prominent nations of the Global South, which are inclined to confront Israel and the United States regarding the Middle East, are also prepared to present the same challenge with regard to resolving the conflict in Ukraine. The perspectives of Western countries and countries of the so-called Global South on the conclusion of this war are entirely distinct. In the Western region, there is discussion regarding the necessity to reinstate justice and territorial integrity of Ukraine. In the Global South, the main priority is perceived as ceasefire, while the matters concerning Ukraine's territorial integrity and assurances of this country's security could potentially be resolved through additional negotiations. At the same time, there is no guarantee that the war will not resume, even in the event of a ceasefire, unless Ukraine receives clear and unequivocal security guarantees that ensure its safety and well-being. And in this situation, Russia has the same opportunity to continue military actions to maintain its influence in Ukraine as Hamas does, trying to preserve its influence in a situation where Israel's capabilities for the final destruction of the terrorist organization are significantly limited by the approach of the United States and the sentiments within Israeli society. Thus, we have a situation with war models for years, and yet there is no understanding of what the consequences of continuing these wars will be for other regions of the world. As I have already stated, after the commencement of Russia's war against Ukraine, any protracted war cannot be restricted solely to the territory of the conflict. Ultimately, it inevitably spills over beyond the borders of the country where the military actions are taking place, or the region where the military actions are occurring, as it significantly impacts the relationships between states supporting one side or the other in the conflict. We witness a comparable situation in the Middle East region. We observe a similar situation in the Gaza sector of the Middle East region. We observe a comparable situation in the conflict between Russia and Ukraine. It is important to note that the positions of different states may not necessarily align when it comes to the methods of resolving both of these conflicts, and the task of finding a common political ground becomes more and more challenging as time goes by, making it increasingly difficult to establish any shared consensus. Pedro Sanchez, the Prime Minister of Spain, is willing to provide military assistance to Ukraine, even if it goes against the position of a party within his left-wing coalition. Simultaneously, he advocates for the recognition of the independence of the Palestinian state. And there are numerous illustrations of different approaches to conflicts, all stemming from the obvious confrontation between democracy and dictatorships in various contexts and scenarios. In Europe, Latin America, Asia, and Africa, the positions of countries are growing increasingly contradictory and divergent in nature, and therefore generate opportunities for fresh conflicts among those who, until a short while ago, could have been regarded as allies in relation to their shared values. And if the Western countries cannot find a common approach to the need to end the conflicts in Ukraine and the Middle East, based on the necessity to stop those who have committed acts of aggression, then we can confidently speak about the growing influence of authoritarian regimes in the contemporary world. First and foremost, there is an increasing role of the People's Republic of China. In Beijing, there is essentially no hesitation. They are trying to assist Russia in its war against Ukraine and have unequivocally sided with the terrorist organization Hamas in its efforts to maintain its positions in the Gaza sector. The clear stance of Beijing makes the People's Republic of China a crucial ally for all those countries that would like to limit the influence of democracy in the modern world, as it serves their goal of curbing democratic impact on global affairs. Perhaps this will be the main outcome of the wars we are currently witnessing in Eastern Europe and the Middle East, regions where ongoing conflicts and geopolitical tensions are prevalent. Wars which seemingly will endure for years and bring numerous additional catastrophes to the inhabitants of the countries directly in the conflict zone, as well as to those states that persist in hoping that new wars will not have an impact on them. Wars for years are a very serious risk because there is always a question of whether each of such conflicts or all conflicts together will escalate into a devastating third world war. Thanks. Stay here, subscribe, follow me on social media, on Patreon, and Buy Me a Coffee channels that support resource development, use YouTube sponsorship,